are good to go. Okay, welcome along to Melbourne. Yep, we know who you are, Michael. It's good having everyone back in person because you could actually interact a lot easier. Well, welcome back. We are Melbourne CocoaHeads. This is meetup number 153, which is a surprisingly large number of meetups, but CocoaHeads has been around for, I believe, as long as iOS has been around to the public. A bit before that as well, so yeah. Okay, don't notice the green screen behind me. No one take photos, no one do memes. Actually, no, that's completely okay. If I'm standing in front of a green screen, it is all fair game. You can take a photo and you can meme it all you want. So, before we get started, it is always appropriate to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are holding this meetup. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would like also to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So for tonight, we are back in person, which means we have a lightning talk from Ed, who will be up shortly, and also a talk from Rudrank. So Ed will be talking on Swift and numerical computing, which, yeah, I always find interesting. I know Ed finds interesting, and we hope that all of you find it interesting as well. And then Rudrank will be talking about the misery of manual builds and how to solve it. Now, all of the events that we run are governed by a code of conduct. Our community is dedicated to providing an inclusive environment for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, age, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, religion or lack thereof, or technology choices. All of these details are up on the website. If you have any issues, please feel free to speak up and let us know, and we will look after you. Little bit of housekeeping. This is our first time at this venue, but all of the standard things apply. So if you are after a bathroom, it is out the door, go past the lifts and then on your right. If you get to the V-line office, it's too far, but yep, that is where it is. Likewise, for the emergency exit, if in the unfortunate situation we need to vacate very quickly from the building, again, out past the lifts, to your right, and there is the stairwell right there. Now, the times we are living in are still very complex, so thank you all for being vaccinated. Please keep safe and socially distant when you can. Quite often we will have name tags. Sadly, we realised our bag of stuff didn't have the name tags in it. That's okay. If you are after one of the organisers, myself, Rob or Sean will be able to help you out. If you are new here and you feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm new, please let us know. Just chat with people and all should be good. As always, there are two audiences for this meetup. There are us here in person, and then there is also the live stream and recorded sessions which happen. Now, please, we always encourage questions, but keep in mind it's going to be across 2 different platforms, so don't ask questions during the presentation. Instead, ask them on Slack in the Meetup channel. If there are questions for the speakers afterwards, I will come up and ask them on your behalf. This just helps everything flow a little bit better and gives everyone the chance to participate. Everything we do at CocoaHeads is done because we have some very wonderful sponsors. Our gold sponsor for this year, as with many years in the past, is Itty Bitty Apps. Sean, who has been kindly letting you in to the office, is one of the people involved there. If you've got questions about Itty Bitty, go have a chat with Sean. We also have some silver sponsors, so REA, any questions about that, I'm going to dob you in, Pete. Don't believe we have any Latitude or Cognizant people here, but if there are, please speak up. And yeah, that's always cool. WWDC 2022, coming soon, we hope. This is always around the time of year where we are told about what WW will be. Some people, such as myself, are still holding out for a trip across to California. It may or may not happen. Another event we hold each month is the Drinks Night. Next one will be on March the 29th. Details in Slack or on Meetup. There are always some other groups to get involved with apart from the Melbourne CocoaHeads. There's a group up in Sydney. There's also GDG Melbourne and a web meetup. If you need to find us, melbournecocoaheads.com. There's Slack as well, and also Twitter, that thing. If you're on Slack and you want to engage, then the Meetup channel is always a good one. If you want to get involved in organising, volunteers channel, looking for work or hiring, the jobs channel. If you've got something you want to share as a speaker, then please jump into the speakers channel. Apps we use shipped. So as always, people are always shipping apps. I believe ANZ shipped something recently, which is pretty cool. A few of us working at ANZ are here tonight, myself included. And that is all for the intro slides. First talk up will be Ed with Swift and numerical computing.
And I forgot about the TV in the bottom.
That's right, I can move that if you've got.
No, it's.
Oops.
Hopefully you have colour.
I do have colour.
Hopefully you get colour with the cable.
That'll do. Is it there?
That looks a bit better. Yes, much better.
Terrific. Okay, thank you for having me. Okay. So this is going to be a brief talk. Last year, as part of my journey, I talked about how I did numerical computing and had basically used daily mathematical puzzles to challenge me on new concepts in Swift. And in that talk, I gave all these different examples of puzzles that I had to write solutions for in Swift, rather than solving them by mathematics. Tonight, I'm going to give a lightning deep talk, whatever that might be. It's going to be lightning, but it's going to go deep, about some of this year's challenges And there are some examples of them there. So, you know,
I just need to stay close to the mic,
Oh.
otherwise people on YouTube can't hear you.
sorry. And basically each day a puzzle appears on a particular Twitter feed, and you can either use mathematics to solve it, or you can try and use logic, or in my case I try and use numerical computing. And sometimes you even get a graphical problem like this one down here, which was you've got 4 knights and what's the minimum number of moves for the 4 knights to swap positions on the board. So that involved actually, you know, moving the pieces around on the board. At the end of it, I thought, I actually have the beginnings of an end game solutioner. You know, put 5 pieces on the board, find checkmate within 5 moves kind of idea. And then there were some others. But the most recent example was Fibonacci series. So Leonardo Fibonacci in around about 1200 AD was pondering on what's the perfect population of rabbits breeding, and he came up with the series of, you start with 1 rabbit, then you get 2 rabbits, then you get 3 rabbits, you get 5 rabbits, you get 8 rabbits, and before you know it, the whole world's covered with rabbits. It turned out that actually there was a Chinese gentleman who had discovered the series in around about 400 BC, so 1600 years before Fibonacci did. But it's a beautiful series, and it involves sort of the miracle of this series mapping to you know, the golden ratio and mapping to things like that. So it's always been something that's interested me as a thing of beauty. So the problem this week was, what is the last digit of the 1206th Fibonacci number? Now the 1206th Fibonacci number is that gigantic number over there. So I thought, well, first of all, I have to calculate that number, which means I'm going to have to do something that exceeds, you know, the integer size of the Swift compiler. And so I went down a burrow of building my own set of solutions so it would ingest, calculate, and then output numbers of that size. And along the way, other people started posting their solutions, and I discovered that there's a thing called BigInt. Now, most of you probably knew that already. But in fact, there is a BigInt on GitHub, and I could have gone there, and I could have got there a lot faster than the day I spent building my code. And along the way, some simple answers started appearing, because it turned out that there is actually a pattern to this series. And you can actually solve this problem not by working out the full number, but just looking at the last digit going through the pattern of 1206 times. So somebody came up with that solution in the bottom left-hand side, and then somebody else came up with a solution in a language called J, which is that scribble in the middle there. And last, you might recall, I talked about people using APL and how opaque and obscure APL is. Well, this is a derivation of APL, and it's even more obscure. And also along the way, I discovered there's actually about 10 different algorithms for solving this Fibonacci series. However, I did three solutions. One is my version of BigInt, which starts over here with, you know, you set your function, print it out, and then compute the addition of all of these numbers for 1,106 times until you get up with a very big number, of which the last digit is number 8. Or you can use the approach of just doing modulus arithmetic, which is the cell in the middle there, and you can get there a lot more quickly. So I published that and said, this is how you can do it in Swift, to which somebody then went, Python's better. I can do it in 3 statements. And I said, oh, you can do it in 3 statements. I can do it in 3 statements too. Here's the Swift solution in 3 statements down the bottom by using tuples. So that's why I like doing these things. They push me to learn new parts of Swift and, you know, exploit different paradigms and work things out. That guy then came back and said, oh, I can even do it in 1 line. And I said, yes, if I use 2 semicolons and make a line long, I can put 3 statements on it too. So, thank you. Hopefully there were no questions.
Oops. I did not see any questions. Thank you, good.
Still there, good to go?
Are we
Start sharing your screen for me.
jumping straight in?
No, you can do an intro.
Oh,
Please do.
okay.
The situation.
Oh, green screen.
Green man's on screen. Yeah.
I had to do that, sorry. Okay,
We'll just do an intro first for you and then I'll let you know when you're on.
cool. Thank you very much, Ed. That was a lightning talk and very informative as well. Always good to see people play around with different mathematical concepts. Up next, we have Rudrank, who is talking about the misery of manual builds and how to solve it. Rudrank is from India. He will be live streaming his talk.
At least we don't have to worry about that.
Yep. Yeah, so please give him your full attention, and we hope it is an engaging and entertaining talk. So over to Rudrank.
Give me 2 seconds to switch it over.
Am I audible? hmm So, hi everyone. My name is Rudrank here, and it is a little awkward to present remotely in a in-person event, but I'm very excited for it. So, my talk is about misery of manual builds and how to solve it. And the talk will be about how I used to do manual builds repeatedly as a naive intern, and I realized the amount of time that I was wasting, and how I started writing unit and UI tests, moved to a CI/CD platform for my apps, and in the end automated from end to end for my own apps and released it to the App Store. So, a brief introduction about myself. I recently graduated last year from college, and in those 4 years, I interned at various startups and at Apple, working on voice control. I previously worked with a lot of startups as an iOS engineer, and I loved writing technical articles, so I wrote many for startups as well. Currently, I am the developer relations engineer at CodeMagic, which is a mobile CI/CD platform, and I'm advocating and helping the iOS community out there. So let's recap to 2020. I was working as an intern in a product startup, and I took the responsibility of their watch application. I was facing an issue on the music player where it was loading very slowly. And if you have worked with WatchOS development, you know how hard it is to have the build on your real device. So we decided to have the builds on a test flight for me and my team to test it on. So in this process, I repeatedly sent manual builds, and at that time we were using Xcode 12, so we didn't have an option to automate the build numbers. So I was for 10 targets, I used to go in each of the targets and increment the build number as well. So I used to then archive the app, wait for it to archive, then click validate, distribute the app, then wait for the post processing to happen. Then after post processing, I used to go on App Store Connect and then add the release notes there. And I think it was like 7 or 8 builds in a day, but it was a disappointing result in the end. So over the internship, I I wasn't aware of any tool like Fastlane or CI/CD services, and because I assumed that for this is a very complex process to automate the whole thing, and you require a specific DevOps person who will handle all these things. So in 2021, I realized that there should be a process that I should have for my own apps as well, because I hate this part of development, and this was the least part where where I have to create the screenshots manually for all the devices and then going to App Store to do the add the release notes as well. So I started writing UI and unit tests for my applications because of one incident that is for another day. And then in the process, I love writing technical articles. So I reached out to Semaphore and Code Magic to write for them on unit and testing, UI testing, and asynchronous testing. And I learned more about mobile CI/CD and how it can help you automate everything. So if I have to give you an example of how my daily routine used to look like as an intern. So I used to go to, let's have my application here. I used to go and increment the build number, then go and change the device to any iOS device, then try to archive it, and then it will start archiving. It is a very small project, but for that startup, it used to take like 5 minutes to archive. Then I go and validate the app while it is analyzing signatures, checking for App Store Connect access. As a person who gets distracted very easily, I used to just open Twitter. And then I think you may be aware of this very famous account that we have called iOS memes that people used to check while Xcode is indexing. But for me, it is more of while it is archiving. And so while it is archiving, let's look at an example meme. So what do you have against storyboards? I'm glad you asked. And the person sends a 2-hour voice note. And as a person who has been doing programmatic UI since the very beginning, it is relatable. So I'm not going to do the whole process of archiving. It's just an example to show the time I used to waste context switching and getting distracted in between. So I realize I need a process where I'm automating the archive and trying to create the screenshots automatically as well. And in the meanwhile, so in July, I started working on an app called Quoting, which shows a list of quotes. And this was just an experiment to start with the async await syntax. And for this app, I wanted to make sure that I have everything from automated, from archiving the app to creating the screenshots manually. And in December, CodeMagic was adding an improvement to submit to App Store. And as a dev person, it was the perfect opportunity to feed the feature into my own app so I can understand the whole process and then write an article about it. So I started making sure that I have a workflow configuration in file. And in December, I launched this app, which was a whole automated process, and I'm very proud of that. So the second part of my talk is that the lessons learned is that you can use Fastlane automation tool on your local machine, or if you want to have all this process on a remote server machine, you can have a CI/CD service in place. Then you can configure to build and test and archive the project, because as your project grows, the need for this grows as well. And then you can automate the process for test flight, where you have different beta groups that you can mention where you want to send that build to, and then release to App Store with a scheduled time or do it manually. And if you have basic screenshots, you can just automate that as well using Fastlane snapshot action, and you can just add a frame to it automatically. So the next part of my talk is regarding how you can actually do it yourself. So let's take an example of the workflow configuration file I had for my application. It is a CodeMagic YAML file, but all the concepts that I'm going to discuss applies to other CI/CD services as well. So usually the providers have a format called YAML for describing everything for all the commands there. So let's say I have a quoting release workflow that consists of all the project, the scheme, and the App Store ID. Do notice that I have this triggering event. So when I have a new release, I go to GitHub, plan a new release, and then it has a webhook that allows me to post a request for each whenever I add a new tag, and it automatically starts the workflow. So I don't have to go to the site and do that. And code signing, it's a nightmare. And if you are doing automatic code signing, it's a lot easier if you're an individual developer compared to working as a team. So you add the scripts for initializing keychain, then fetch all the signing files for your particular project and of the type App Store Connect distribution. Then you add the certificates to keychain and make Xcode use that profile. And this automatic versioning thing that I used to do manually for all the 10 targets, all you have to do is just say that increment the number by 1 for all the targets. And you shouldn't do that on your own. And the next part is running tests for your application. You can specify the project, the scheme, and the device where you want to test your app. And the next part is on distribution, the archiving the IPA to send to App Store Connect. You can just specify the project name and the scheme. If you want to also automate the screenshot part, you can use the support of Fastlane to just execute Fastlane snapshot. It gives you a file called an HTML file that contains all the screenshots. Here's an example of it. So this is the screenshot that I use in my apps. It's very basic. I just write a few UI tests for this to take all the screenshot for all the devices I want. And you can, if you have an app that consists of a lot of languages, you can also do it for other languages as well. This saves you a lot of time when you're working on this. And the next part is about publishing to App Store. You provide the App Store credentials that you can get from, just give me a second. You can get it from apps users and access. You have to do it if you are using a tool like Fastlane or your CI/CD server, where you are providing a key ID, an issuer ID, and the private API key. And you can have the release type as manual, automatic, or scheduled. I preferred to have a scheduled release so I can do all the marketing stuff around that particular date. And assuming that my app is accepted on the App Store. And for the last part, I usually don't like to go to the website and check what's the build status. So you can notify yourself on email or Slack for the success build or a failure build and get the feedback on what went wrong. So in hindsight, this is the whole workflow configuration, a simple configuration that helps you test the app, archive the app, takes automatic screenshots, and publish it to the App Store. So this is me that changes the code on GitHub. It automatically starts the workflow on CodeMagic. If there's a error, it sends feedback to me, and if it's a good success, then it ships the app directly to App Store. So this is how I'm going to start. This is where I start the build, and it shows all this process happens on a remote machine. So I can go grab a coffee while this is happening, or I can go and work on the marketing material. I don't have to go and look at the website or do anything on that part. When the App Store distribution part is done, the post-processing happens for the App Store distribution, and I don't have to intervene. There's no human intervention where you have to go and manually click and send it to test flight. So it automatically creates a new App Store submission on App Store Connect. So let's say I'm back from my coffee break, and all I see is that it is waiting for review with the release note that I added for this version. And if you see, my first version actually contained the release note as this version contains bugs and improvements, but that's how it is. So in conclusion, when you are listening to this for the first time, or this concept, it is very complicated. It sounds complicated and complex, but as you progress and write this all steps on your own, then it gets very simple. And now that I have one app which has the end-to-end automation process pipeline created, it is very easy for me to automate all my other apps as well, because all I have to do is take that workflow configuration file and add it for all the apps. And right now what I have done is created a monorepo which has all my apps, and when there's a change set in one of the particular folders, then it triggers the build for that particular app. So it's just one whole configuration file. And with that, I conclude my talk, and you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter, and I open source my libraries and frameworks on GitHub at Rudrang3m. And I also write about iOS development and Swift UI on my blog, rudrang.blog.
You can probably watch it again on YouTube.
Oh man. Failed. This one. That's better.
Hey! Apologies to our sponsors in attendance with the... Oh, I actually like pink, so I'm happy with pink logos, but yes. Pink and monochrome green for our sponsors, but thank you so much to our sponsors, to Itty Bitty Apps, to Latitude, REA Group and Cognizant. We can't hold these events without them, and they're always a bunch of really great, friendly people. The next event that will be up is the CocoaHeads Drink Night. It is always the last Tuesday of the month, which will be the 29th of March. March just never seems to end. It started in 2020 and it's just, yeah, that joke's been done too many times.
This is the last time you can do it though, probably.
Don't say that. Okay, so Drinks Night, end of March 29th. As always, a group of us will be wandering across to one of the local establishments. Will be Saint and Rogue, which is just a few blocks that way. Always a good venue to head to. As always, thank you so much for joining us. Please hang around a bit here. There's probably still plenty of food and some drink to be enjoyed. And once things wind down, we will be heading to the pub. So thank you very much. And yeah, we will see you at the next event.